I think one of the biggest questions that anyone in media always has is what is the true effectiveness of this medium? And I think that's always been like a struggling point in general in media. I've lived that space. I think we all have. Whenever you have those top leaders saying, is it working? And you kind of like, it is. It is. But yeah, it is even more, let's say, blurry in creator marketing than I think it is versus now traditional advertising.
Explore the minds and marketing strategies behind today's winning brands and businesses. Tap into the power of the creator economy with Earned by CreatorIQ.
Let's kick it off this way. So I think a lot of us know the brands that you represent, Eucerin, Nivea, La Prairie, others, but not a lot of people know the engine behind it is Beiersdorf. Start there. Talk to me about Beiersdorf, the company, the organization kind of behind the brands.
Sure. Beiersdorf is a German company based in Hamburg, is 110 years old and is mainly on skincare. And while you have perhaps never heard about Beiersdorf as a name, it's the company sitting behind Nivea, Eucerin, Labello, Hansaplast, Shankai, La Prairie. So a very big portfolio of brands. It's a company of about 20,000 people making around 10 billions in revenues each year, and it's been doing extremely well on innovation since the start. The company roots is more about innovation. It's it always came up first on skincare in particular, and it's with a global footprint. Nivea is, for example, a brand you will find in every single shop in the world. So it comes with a great responsibility because the brand equity is incredible, and challenges from a logistics standpoint to be able to be in every place on earth.
So we talked a little bit about Beiersdorf. I want to talk a little bit about you so we can level set the conversation. Antoine and Hassan, I'm so excited to be talking to you again. We talked for 30 minutes yesterday at CreatorIQ Connect. I feel like we've had a full 48 hours steeped in the creator economy, although that is the world you live in and day out. Give us a little bit of background on each of you as a way of introduction. How did you find yourself here today and at Beiersdorf? Antoine, I'll start with you.
Sure. I'm Antoine. I come from French West Indies in the Caribbean, and I did most of my career actually in a little bit on fintech when I started, then mainly in automotive. All the time it was about transformation and digital. So I had lots of work here in the UK where we are shooting this, and then in France in the headquarters with like the very thick carpet of a headquarters as you expect. And I work mainly on media and digital. So after that, I completely switched to entertainment. I moved to a company called Jelly Smack, which is in the creator economy. So it really opened a complete new world. As a media guy, I didn't realize how big and how fast this was growing. So it was an amazing experience to be part of a startup, a scale-up technically, who was managing monetization at the time for creators. And I had a chance to work with Mr. Beast as one of my clients, and other big names like Brad Mondo, Bailey Sarian, amazing creators. My favorite, I must say, Charlotte Dobre. If you don't know Charlotte Dobre, have a check. She's great. So, and after all this, I had the opportunity to join Beiersdorf to help them on change management, really to help the CDO team, the Chief Digital Officer team, on different topics, budget, transformation, and organization. And obviously, influence is a huge part of the current transformation. So I'm helping as much as I can Hassan in these tasks as well.
Hassan, give us a little bit of background. You've been at Beiersdorf for quite a while now, but obviously started elsewhere.
Yeah, 9 years. And now actually hearing also Antoine going through his journey, it's kind of funny how I go through kind of my profile and my CV, and I kind of feel like everything was leading up to this point. So it was a pretty cool moment right now. So I have, about 15 years experience. I'm Egyptian. I started out in social media and digital creative advertising in an agency back where I'm from in Cairo for 4 years, which really like boomed back in 2010 with the whole Arab Spring, everyone mobilizing on social media. So I got exposed to huge brands growing at super fast paces, going into pitches all the time with big brands like Axe, Rexona, McDonald's. Chevrolet was actually one of my clients, which was also a really fun time as well. And then I moved on, as one does, to go into sports management.
Sure, linear. It's the obvious choice.
But that was my passion at the time. I really wanted to work in sports. I was a football fanatic, football, soccer for you, but football for the rest of us.
Yes, I am American. Thank you. Thanks for the reminder.
But no, I'm a huge football fan, but I was always as obsessed with the sports, of the business side of sports as well. So I really wanted to try and make that my next step in my career. I went to Madrid. I lived in Spain for a year and a bit in the Real Madrid University, where I studied an MBA in sports management, which was a wild ride and I loved it. And then I got a job in Beiersdorf right after that because they had just signed the global sponsorship with Real Madrid back in 2015. And I got taken on as a brand manager. And this is where I knew of Nivea Men. I had been using their products. I was a huge fan. But when Beiersdorf, you see that email and you see like in the title Beiersdorf, I didn't know the company per se. So that's when I did my homework and kind of found out everything about it. But I was a huge Nivea Men fan, just naturally, which was a great match for me. And then I worked a lot, learned a lot about the commercial side, launched great products such as the Deep range in the Middle East and North Africa, based out of Dubai. But one of my biggest, let's say, successes in that role was actually utilizing creators and influencers through the format of professional football players, actually.
Sure.
So a lot of them used to vacation in Dubai, and I used to try and hustle to try and get people to shoot something similar to this. Like we created a whole platform called the Barbershop, which is where like we'd get celebrities, mainly football players because of our link with football, to use our products in a barbershop setup and talk about like life and their career and everything like that. So we were trying to create this link between like skincare and men hanging out.
Yeah,
and
sure. Community, conversation, like, yeah, that's so fun.
This like brotherhood, let's say, mentality that we have in the Middle East. So it was really, really cool. So then I shifted into the digital and media team, where I basically just kept taking on new roles until I became head of digital and media for the Middle East and North Africa, which was my last role. Until about 7 months ago, I've moved to Hamburg and I took on the global head of social media and influencers. Moved to Hamburg in the winter, but now that's over. Now I'm working remotely in Dubai again, but
I think we said yesterday when we were talking, what advice do you have for enjoying the Hamburg winter? You said buy a coat.
I swear. I swear.
True.
It's one of the most biggest decisions I've made in my life. It took me a month to get that coat.
Don't get me wrong, it's a lovely city.
Beiersdorf is so much intertwined in the culture and the tradition of the city.
Yeah.
So there's not many companies or not many cities where you would find this relationship between like a brand or a product as much as you would in the DNA of Hamburg. Like the street that the office is on in Hamburg is called Beiersdorf Street.
Yeah.
So, and there's so many different offices and warehouses, production centers, and you kind of feel like it's a bit of the core DNA of the city, which is a lovely thing as well.
Which kind of goes back to the core DNA of the company, right?
Yes.
It's like very like community, familial. So it's nice that you see that reflected in the place as well as the people.
Yeah, the factory is literally touching the headquarters. So as you walk into the headquarters, which is beautiful, completely redone now, very modern, and is literally next to the factory who produces the famous tin, you know, where you have all the tins of the world are pressed in that place in Hamburg to go in all the countries in the world.
That's very cool.
Pretty cool.
Very cool. Okay, so you spent, 6 months in Hamburg?
Yep.
Training up for your new global role?
Yep.
Talk to me about that transition. What is your role today?
So today I kind of have two hats that link in the middle. So one hat is being in charge of social media on a global level when it comes to platform relationships, overlooking KPIs, overlooking the ways of working, let's say with the certain platforms. But all campaigns are executed at a local level. So that's like with a global media hat on, which is great for me with the experience I have doing it in market as well. So I relate to the markets, I relate to the regions, and able to link two and two together. On the other side, I'm more or less the orchestrator for the whole transformation that's happening on our, what we call the precision influence transformation and journey. So I work mainly with a lot of media heads, the regions, our consultants, such as like Antoine and BCG, and everyone who's supporting us in getting all our pieces lined up in order, but also working very closely with our counterparts in the comms side, in terms of what will we say and what will the content be and what is our message that we want to line out into the world.
Important. Okay, so I think the thing I want to dig into from that is really, why are you kind of embarking on this multi-million-dollar transformation, really at the organizational level, right? Full company level, especially with the Center of Excellence approach that you're taking. Why now? Why influencer marketing? Why the shift in focus?
I think one of the things we were saying is that we know that everyone has been doing influencer and creator marketing for a while in Beiersdorf.
Like all the brands.
All the brands,
Yeah.
across all the brands. Some in different, let's say, capacities with different reasons. Like you would always see a bigger shift between Nivea and Eucerin. Like Nivea is a mass product brand, but everyone knows, versus Eucerin with a derma, let's say, background, and also with that added medfluencer, let's say, layer and recommendations happening. So we've been doing it for a while. It's just that when you don't have that clear definition and terminology and everyone kind of on the same boat in one way going in the same direction, it can get a bit frantic. And the bigger it becomes and the more we get data that proves that influencer marketing is best for ROI and creator content is performing better than owned content, it starts to become difficult to tell that story without everyone kind of looking at it the same way. So with the company seeing more and more investment, with us seeing more and more ROI, we decided that we needed a program that would get everything in order. Hence, we have upskilling, enablement, tools such as CreatorIQ, terminologies, definitions. Like, what do you call a macro influencer in Romania versus a macro influencer in South Africa? Should be the same thing when you're a global company. So there's been a lot of, let's say, homework in that end. But yeah, well, I think we've done quite a lot of progress in 1 year.
You talked about the up-leveled investment. What, over 50% of your investment is in digital? What percentage of that would be for creator influencer?
That out of the digital spend, it's something that is depending on markets, between 15 to 30%, and also depending on brand. So we have different, depending on your objective and how the size of our spend, it sits between that, and it's growing year on year significantly. So for specific brands, we, for example, in a year time, we move from 15% to 25% in a matter of 12 months.
Wow. So the pace that you're going is quite quick. The scale that you're moving is quite large, right? How many markets?
Global.
So all the markets. So
Yeah, everyone.
But we have like huge markets that we work with closest point. Important to understand as well when we were asking about how the transformation went and so on, just to step back a little on the vision. Because when I joined Beiersdorf, it was to work with Axel Adida, the CDO of Beiersdorf. And Axel is an amazing guy. He really is an amazing personality as well. And he brought in Beiersdorf like the vision in terms of, okay, this is where the company needs to go over the next year. So every year, Axel has a bet. Okay, and last year, the bet was precision marketing. So how you make sure you optimize your media spend. So you make sure you control that. But very important that it sits, as you said, as a center of excellence. So the P&L doesn't sit with global. It sits with the regions. So there are 3 big regions in Beiersdorf. One is called EUNA, so it's Europe and North America. Another one is emerging market, which is pretty much all the markets, but the EUNA and China. And then you have China. And that's pretty much the big split. And the objective of the Center of Excellence is really to make sure, as you said, to bring everybody together in terms of what do we consider measure a success? What tools should we use? And how can we share best practice together? Not at all in a top-down view, because as I said, at the end of the day, the P&L sits with the regions and they are the one driving the business. The Center of Excellence is an enabler, and we are almost like servant leaders. Yeah, we're trying to really enable them through consulting, trying to find the right people, the right tech, supporting on training and so on. But their hands-on work in the market is absolutely essential in the success. It is not something that comes out of like the global team from Hamburg, say, do this, do that.
Right. You're influencers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
100%. We like to use the terminology change management quite a lot as well.
Yes. I mean, we talked yesterday, like change management is just management today, right?
Exactly.
Because
Yeah,
everything's changing all the time.
Yeah. I realized that after a few weeks. Originally, when Axel told me to join, he's like, oh, it's going to be a couple of months. Or like, yeah, fine. And I've been here a year. So either I didn't do my job well, and I should have done that in 2 months, or maybe change takes a bit more time than we think it does.
Yes. And there's a lot more change ahead of us. Okay. So you talked about the bet being precision marketing. So the new bet is precision influence.
Correct.
Yes.
That's the precision marketing, precision influence. It's a big program that was launched last year as pilots, part of the pilot, few markets, some of them in the emerging market region. Why? Also because maturity level. You have in these markets, obviously, they are embracing as consumers much faster the having influencers as part of their daily marketing experience. And that's something in Europe you see as well and see growing, but clearly not as fast as what you see in Brazil, South Africa, where we did those pilots. So at the time we did the pilot, and when I say we, in fact, it was mostly Hassan and the team with the support with the BCG or with the strategic company we work with. So they really help us both at if you want, at a global level with the leadership team to say, this is a big shift, we need to go with it. So Axel was really pushing for that. The region really embraced it and went on with it. And so that means that it's not just about training on something new. This is a complete change. That means new job titles. That means we have now precision influence managers in markets. That is a job that didn't exist a year ago, and that's something that is everywhere in Beiersdorf now. So you have HR, you have controlling, you have finance. How do you measure how much we spend on influencers? How do we make sure we keep a track on it internally in our internal reporting system? So it's not just a new channel like, okay, there's a new TikTok. Okay, so it's not that. It's really a complete reset on the way we work and the way we organize ourselves.
Okay, so yesterday we talked about senior leaders asking simple questions. I really love, I'm borrowing that phrase and I'm going to take it into every conversation that I have from now on. What are some of the questions that you had to ask yourself over this past year? And then the second part of the question is, what questions are you asking yourself now?
I think we have a lot of similar questions, but I think those questions just become even deeper and deeper now the more we go. So I think one of the biggest questions that anyone in media always has is, what is the true effectiveness of this medium? And I think that's always been like a struggling point in general in media. I've lived that space. I think we all have. Whenever you have those top leaders saying, is it working? And you kind of like, it is. It is.
Yes? Question mark?
Yeah, exactly. From the data that I have. But yeah, it is even more, let's say, blurry in creator marketing than I think it is versus now traditional advertising. So that's one of the things that we're really like doubling down on, but we always talk about it all the time. Like, what is that one number that we can report to top management? What is that one trend that we can show that things are working? And we get asked that quite a lot, as you obviously do when you're investing a lot of money and time and resources into a program such as this. So we always knew that was going to be a topic, but now I think it's even more a topic of within influencer marketing, what are those KPIs? But then in the broader perspective, overall as a business, let alone market share, net sales, social performance, TV performance, etc., what little nook does creator marketing have in that space?
Sure.
On the simple question, you have, of course, you said it at the start, it's a multi-million-dollar investment for Beiersdorf. It's not just about the transformation itself, it's about how much we spend today and so on. So you will have, for example, Greta is board member, a president of Nivea, amongst other things. So she has multiple jobs within Beiersdorf. And obviously, as a board member, she's very cautious about volume, profit, quality. And she goes, when we spend that much money in the transformation, she will have very direct questions, say, okay, how much do we spend on the precision influence program? Not just in transformation, but as a running. And you realize it's a simple question, but when you realize how big that is, if you think about it, what it is, influence program, it is literally to have sometimes agencies, often local, that you need, in fact, to have that feel of who are the best creators to work with. Then you have to find the creators that you pay. Then often these creators have talent agencies that do represent them that also take some money. So along the way, that's a lot of people, and eternally you need to define, okay, what is working media? Okay, so like something you can compare to an ad versus non-working media. So that is something part of the framing that had to be defined, but beyond defining it, now you need to measure it. So you need to be able to quickly come back and say, okay, how much do we spend so far on working media for influencers and how fast the growth is going? And unless we have the technology to be able to capture that and to measure it, the current system are not set to measure that kind of spend. That's where the tech comes along, and we need to have this to help us steer, or not necessarily steer, but at least giving the visibility to board members to say, okay, this is how fast we're growing. And as you said, how we measure success and this is impact in terms of business.
I think there's so many interesting things in there. One is that the destination or North Star is still in progress, right? Still trying to figure out how do you actually measure the true effectiveness of what you're doing. I think that's actually quite common across the industry. I think I just interviewed Jasmine Enberg, who's a VP and principal analyst at eMarketer, and she has termed 2025 the year of professionalization for the creator economy. And measurement is a huge piece of that, having standardization, not just at a company or organization level, but at an industry level. I think it is something that we still have yet to solve for. To your point, it's quite complex. All of the, the creative supply chain, if you will, the distribution that creators offer, the way that work gets done, where it gets distributed and used across your company, because obviously creators can solve many problems as business partners, whether that's content creation exclusively for your owned and operated or paid program, whether that's creating content on their own channel. So it is quite complex. But I think coming back to this idea that the simple question of how much are we spending is not something that as an industry we can easily answer today, is a huge opportunity for us to collectively gain ground. And I think it needs to happen sooner rather than later. I imagine if you have these questions, others have these questions. I also think the other interesting thing that you said is these are questions that board level is asking. You're reporting, this goes all the way up through, obviously, you said Axel had the bet on precision influence, but this is at the most senior levels of the organization, which is, I think, really eye-opening in terms of how far we've come as an industry, that creator metrics are even part of the vocabulary of the board of directors at a Beiersdorf.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think it's just because the amount of data that is proving that it is becoming an important medium is just overwhelming. And they see it and they know it. And also we even said this yesterday, sometimes we have to also remember that we are also human beings on the other side of our corporate hat. And we on an everyday basis are getting influenced by creators all the time. And just the amount of content, you guys had amazing stats, for example, on the amount of content that is outweighing and outnumbering owned content today. And people feel that, and people know that, even if they are on the board, and they see all the data coming from the markets, and they see all our competitors that are necessarily winning because they are using that space. The rise of, let's say, more indie brands also that are utilizing it. The terminology of creator-led products and creator-led brands are starting to ramp up so much more in the past couple of years that when you start losing market share and you start seeing those guys grow, questions get asked.
Yeah, they tend to do. And we've seen
Exactly.
that for the last 15 years in the space. I think it's one of the reasons why the space is so dynamic. You can also learn, I think, a lot from the indie brands who have to use this as currency. I think we're at a really interesting inflection point because companies like Beiersdorf are so keenly aware of the impact of creators now and really able to put the organizational and budgetary heft behind it. And so I do think it becomes an interesting time for indie brands as well. It's like, what is your competitive advantage when, again, everyone is kind of operating at a different level, both of investment, but also just a focus organizationally? What brands within the portfolios, we talked about emerging markets playing a huge role in your growth in the next couple of years. What brands do you think are really well set up for success within the portfolio with creators specifically?
The focus until now has been mainly on Nivea, who is in terms of volume definitely leading the part from a revenue standpoint in many areas. So Nivea, it was a must. It was not a question whether it was has to be done. It is part of the journey. This is part of what people, how you consume media now. So Nivea was absolute must. Eucerin as well, which is often described as by the CEO as the hidden jewel of Beiersdorf. The CEO used to run Eucerin and really turn it around to something that was there to a really flying brand. Is the brand that really that everybody loves within Beiersdorf, because we see that significant growth, while Nivea is at that pedestal that like the number one
Sure.
brand. And this one is tagging along, like going super fast. So it's always like the underdog. So these two are like the biggest brand investment. But as we say at the start, there are other brands, especially on healthcare. So we have Hansaplast, Elastoplast, and also Labello, which is part of the Nivea. So to start a transformation, the bet was to work on those who are generating the most revenues with other companies, because that means that they are the most resources behind and so often. So, and that's
also the most organic coverage and content, right? It's like, talk about the footprint online, people creating content about the brands, like those go hand in hand.
Correct. In the same, yet you have like I really like Hansaplast, the brand, because if you think of the journey of how things are structured within Beiersdorf, you have like your everyday skincare brands are about Nivea. Then when you have problematic skin, work on acne and other things, you think this is where often Eucerin steps in. And then when you have damage on the skin and you need to recover, then you have all the brand with Hansaplast. So I like that little triangle of how the brands working together. And often you can tell very genuine and nice stories about Hansaplast because you can get kids involved, and that's something that's the sharing moment. So we're not forgetting those brands. The thing is, at the start, it was really to work on the biggies in terms of revenues, but surely all the brands that's the benefit of such a group, will benefit from the technology, the framework, the way everything's working, so because they have a lot less resources in terms of people and media spend and so on. So they will definitely directly benefit from the synergies of the two biggies being there.
If I could also bounce off of that, because I agree, and also like I have some like conflict also on some of the things that Antoine said, but it's because with me, but this is the perfect thing, let's say, for my role, is I am brand agnostic, is what we say it like internally. Like I have a terminology of like one Beiersdorf, and so I work with all of the brands, and I'm a lot more involved with like the individuals. So like a big shout out to all the teams there. So like Chris from Emerging Markets, who was Christopher Abraham, who was the guy who led the whole transformation to begin with, like last year, but also alongside that on the branded end in global now. Hansaplast, for example, like Antoine said, has an amazing story. It is the first plaster basically ever. It was the first one with the gauze that has ever been released in the world. So it has really special stories. It's the first one that was breathable. So, like those holes that you get in a plaster to let the wound dry out. Like, they were the first one to do that as well. So again, going back to like the innovation behind the brand, but also Eucerin have been doing it for so much longer, let's say, in terms of medical management and recommendations of dermatologists. So they are on that journey as well. Whereas in Nivea, there's so many more different resources, all the regions, all the comms, playbooks, and working with the platforms. But how we work together, whenever we talk to them, it's basically going up to people and saying, what tools do you need to get started? And also starting to talk to them at different, let's say, capacities. Just to get people going into the journey, like 1 foot in, is kind of what our metric for success is right now. Get everyone into the journey, but just at different paces.
Sure.
You would expect Nivea to get in much faster, especially with the organic reach, but also with the pressure in terms of market share is also there. So, and there's more people to move and to mobilize to go and get something done, but you have the same on Eucerin, healthcare, super hungry. Labello is a Gen Z brand, so Nivea Lip in some countries and Labello in others, but
in Brazil is doing super well.
Super well.
With men and women, it is
Italy,
Labello
Spain,
is great. Yeah.
So it's a super young brand, super colorful, super dynamic, that we can't also, whenever I talk to Daniel, who's the head of Labello and Lip Care in Beiersdorf and Global, you can never not get excited on what is the potential of creator marketing for a brand like that, and how it can really drive the brand image online and all the conversations related to the brand.
It's really interesting because the way you're talking about your creator partners and your creator community is so similar to the role of both of your jobs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like creators need to be educators and enablers to their broader community, just like you are enablers and educators internally and externally.
Yeah.
That like switch of control into again, enabling creators who are really so much better at telling stories to their distinct audiences than, say, we would be as brands going over, through, or very prescriptively through creators. Has that been a tension point internally, the kind of letting go of control so that other people can tell a story that has really been shaped and protected over, 100 plus years?
Yeah, naturally. Naturally it is there, but you'd be surprised at how many people are actually willing to embrace it. Especially like where I was running one of our pilots last year in the Middle East. It was very apparent, it was a very easy sell to say like, they know how to tell this story better than us, let us utilize them. But also thank God for data always. And our relationships with the platforms especially, like rather than, let's say, launching a creator marketing or an influencer, let's say, campaign, you would always tend to work with platforms such as TikTok, who make it very easy through their TTCX, let's say, method, product, that you get content created for you that you can then test against your own content. And once you keep doing that and you start seeing the results more and more and more on the creator content just doing so much better, you start to get that leniency and that flexibility, and people adapt and people start wanting to listen. But still, if you were in a room of top leadership, there was always a little bit of tension of we cannot let go. And I understand that, and I also agree to some level, there should be a bit of a level of control or a level of putting a bit of a flag into the ground and saying this is who the brand is. Now make of it what you will, but there's a core that is kind of defined by us. But that just happens, I guess, with over time. And as you talk to the creators better, and as you brief them better, and as you know your own brand also better, you start to tell and you start to make that definition of what is the brand also a bit more open.
And that's not specific to Beiersdorf. I think I had the same challenges at Renault. So if you think about it, is we've been taught to be absolute control freak when it comes to the creative. Yeah. So, and the platform were part of that. Platform would say, oh, you need to make sure your branding is like within the 3 first seconds.
Yeah.
Or you need to do very short content. Like let's make it like a 7-second or 12-second, and you need to be snappy and so on. So we were like, say, okay, we need to how do you talk about the brand, and we become like obsessed with how the creative was and how it's in the execution and the crafting. And suddenly we are being told that actually, guys, you better trust these guys because they know what they're doing. So you can't just change, not 15 years, but 50 years, 50 of marketers focusing on making the best creative with the best impact and so on, to a point where, okay, now you are an enabler. You have just to share talking points, little stories with mushrooms and explaining how things work to creators. They grab it, they don't. They do, because you still need to have that balance between authenticity, a word that we hear a lot and maybe over and over, but it's true. You need the best advertising through influencers, and when it feels genuine, and the community knows it. So it needs to feel authentic, so it needs to be in the terms of the creator, yet you need to match what are the message you want to convey, not necessarily as a product, but as a brand. So I think the most important part is good because internally it helps the brand to say, and we work closely with all the comms team, so the content team. And for Nivea, for example, Nicholas is really embracing that change and to work, okay, these are the values of Nivea, and we need to make sure that we find the right creators that are matching those values, which is more important than finding the creators that has the best reach, or because we talk to nano, to big creators, so it doesn't matter. So now the priority is to make sure, how do we give the framework so the markets can source the right creators matching the brand values. And that is a complete different set than working with our creative agencies that we've been working for years and years and years to refine every bit of creative.
Yep. One of the smartest brand strategists that I know, her name's Vivian Walsh. She used to run brand at Meta. She was at Uber, Visa. She says that the best brands are like the best humans, they know who they are. So they're really open and vulnerable, and they surround themselves with the best people.
Yeah.
So if you're confident in who you are and you can share that with other people to kind of tape take and be a part of your story. I've always like really liked that analogy. It resonates a lot with me. I think, we talked about this can be the last question, but we talked about it's a good time to be in skincare right now. Skincare as a category is growing. I think it's definitely taken the lead. It's outpacing even traditional like color cosmetics within the broader beauty space. Your brands are set up really well within that. We've seen year-on-year growth, double digits for at least the top kind of 3 contenders, Nivea, Eucerin, and even La Prairie, which it's a tough time for luxury right now. So it's still seeing growth there, at least in the coverage that we track. I'm curious, what do you think the competitive advantage is for you looking forward? Where are the opportunities for Beiersdorf brands specifically to kind of stand out and take that? You mentioned one Beiersdorf, but the mix of DNA of the company, the product, and the community that you're building.
What I love about skincare is that luckily skin is thing that everybody's wearing, like across the world, So the great thing about skincare is that you can tap onto many territories. And you're right, the part of that is today, you mentioned it, innovation, great molecules, ingredients that we need to shout about, but also it's a universal topic and we can tap on different territories. And I think that's a huge advantage because Nivea is a global brand, present everywhere, is touching everyone's life. And based on the values that are driven with the brand and with the community, to be fair, to understand a bit better how Nivea is perceived and where it stands. Take that one brand example, is to activate those territories. And rather than we work with skincare, influencers, but it's interesting to develop that logic of which are the territories that are matching the brands, where we feel legitimate and where people embrace us, where we want to activate. I think that's going to be something that is super exciting for the brand.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like my experiences with Eucerin, for example, are entirely surrounding my children. Like both of my boys had eczema when they were young, and we were Eucerin users only on them, which was always really interesting. That's such a different story than say like maybe a skinfluencer. Like that's like such a different approach.
Yeah.
What about you, Hassan?
I think the sky's the limit, really, is that with all the great work that we've been doing so far, like we said, now as a part of this transformation journey, everything can get ramped up. So we're opening conversations already with all the brand teams internally. Nivea is already on a huge, let's say, upskilling journey along with Eucerin side by side. Hansaplast is getting introduced to the whole journey, but they've already been doing it for a while. So now we're going to see how we can support and push them up even more. Already talked a bit about Labello, like how much of a creator content role is playing in its marketing strategy. So I just think that we're not going to focus on just one of them. I think we're going to focus on all of them. La Prairie also, as you mentioned, even with added pressure on the category right now, this is a weapon that you can use basically to fight it back. So I just see it happening all across. And honestly, I just want to even like use this because I won't forgive myself and give a shout out to all the teams that I work with because they're like all our partners. Like we have internally, like we coined it as like the Precision Influencer core team, but all of them. So Christopher Abraham from emerging markets, Melissa Manev and Ella from the Europe and North American region. We have Melissa Hadrovic in Nicholas's team, as well as Jennifer Badran, who manages the Medfluencers. But Melissa Hadrovic is even like an influencer we have within the company, by the way, so you could check her out. So she's great at giving context to all of these teams in terms of how would you as an influencer like to receive a brief?
Oh, that's so interesting. Is it coincidence? Did you hire her in as a kind of internal creator subject matter expertise, or does that just parallel path kind of her?
It kind of parallel path. I think she started off her career with us in Beiersdorf in the brand side for Nivea Men in terms of social. Like she was coming to support social and digital content. So it kind of went hand in hand. But then she moved into this team and her experience in influencer has been pivotal from the comms perspective. And that is also great. And we need more people like those amazing names that I just said, other than also Julie from Eucerin and Dr. Julia Gallinger, also from the medical management. So many people. This is not just a trip for, let's say, Hassan and Antoine. There's so many people involved. Our global media team for setting everything up. But everyone's experience, such as Melissa's, comes in a huge advantage for us.
Takes a village. I also love, like you just said, like it's one step at a time. Like let's get everybody like one foot further down the path.
Exactly.
And then it's a job well done. Thank you so much for spending the time with me today.
Thank you.
Be a friend, tell a friend, and subscribe. Earned by CreatorIQ. CreatorIQ is your all-in-one solution to grow, manage, scale, and measure your influencer marketing program. Ready to unlock the power of the creator economy? Get started with a demo today at CreatorIQ.com.